this list, in our number 10 spot, we have a death ray. Archimedes, if that's how you say it, was born in 287 BC in the city-state of Syracuse, which at the time was a part of ancient Greece, but now would be a part of Sicily. When the Roman army set sail to lay siege on Syracuse, he began trying to find ways to deal with protecting his home and ways to bring death to those in the Roman army. He used his knowledge of physics to build a weapon that would help fend off those sailing into the city. While he managed to make quite a few effective and honestly very cool gadgets in order to fight these men off, the one we are here to talk about today is the death ray. While this sounds like some sort of crazy laser beam, it is surprisingly much simpler despite us not being able to recreate it today. The death ray was a series of mirrors that reflected concentrated sunlight onto the Roman ships. If you've ever used a magnifying glass in sunlight, you know where this is going. Those concentrated rays of sunlight were enough to set the ships ablaze, and it is said that ship after ship of the Roman fleet all caught fire, only to then sink into the Mediterranean. Many attempts to recreate the death ray have of course happened, and some have been moderately successful, but not in the way that this historical story suggests. Maybe he just had that magic touch. In our number 9 spot today, we have Ulfberht. This mysterious sword has been confusing ever since it was discovered by archaeologists. Experts were able to date this sword back to the Viking era sometime from 800 to 1000 AD, but no one could figure out how this sword was made, especially from what technologies were available at the time. It seemed as though this sword was made using techniques that didn't exist until 800 years later when the Industrial Revolution happened, so how could it have been made all this time before? It is said that everything about the sword, from the composition of the metal to the extreme heat needed to forge the blade, it just couldn't have been done at the time, but clearly it was. So how? A blacksmith who tried to recreate the sword using only methods that would have been used then explained that he was unable to make it without resorting to more modern technology. In our number 8 spot today, we have Nepenthe. If you're a person who's ever had to be subjected to the process that is antidepressant medication, this one might frustrate you just a little bit. The ancient Greeks and Romans discovered a lot of things, some of which we use now, and some that seem to have been lost, but could have potentially proved to be exceptionally useful to us, and that is exactly what this one is. Ancient Greeks were known to treat the bereaved with this medicine that seems to have been some sort of a primitive antidepressant. It is said that it was known for its ability to chase sorrow away and also to cause forgetfulness. There are many references to this medicinal plant, but at this point we are completely unsure of which modern plant aligns with these ancient descriptions, or if it even exists at all anymore. In our number 7 spot today, we have the telharmonium. The telharmonium is regarded as one of the world's first electronic instruments. This instrument was kind of like an organ, but it used wheels to create different synthetic tones. From here, the tones would be transmitted over telephone wires with the intention of getting the music broadcast so that people could listen in. Considering the fact that this instrument was created in 1897, that's a pretty cool invention for the time, so the fact that it once existed is super cool. Unfortunately, however, the idea was taking too much energy from the grid, which led to it being totally scrapped. Instead of finding out another way to use this instrument, or just waiting for technology to advance to a point where this would be able to be used, they just destroyed it. Now, in 2021, not only does the telharmonium not exist, but there aren't even any recordings of it, so it seems as though this might be one thing that's lost forever.
Moving on, number 6, we have the killer drones. So right now you can go out and buy a small drone that can fly around and take pictures or videos, which is fine as long as you know how to fly it and you don't crash it into people. But in the future, we are going to have to worry about killer drones. It's believed that more than 80,000 surveillance drones and almost 2,000 attack drones will be purchased around the world in the next 10 years. These drones will of course be far more advanced than the ones that we currently have. But imagine that, you get in an argument with your neighbor, and next thing you know, you hear this loud buzzing sound outside of your house. You go and check, and there's a massive thing hovering in the air with an AK just attacking you. Before you can run back inside, it's firing shots and bam, you're dead. Now that was a little dramatic, but some scientists are against this and are like, why are people creating more devices and weapons that literally will do no good and only cause harm? We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the TV that watches you. This is a TV that will watch your every move. It will record the sounds you make and physical, emotional, and facial reactions to whatever it is that you're watching. It then stores this in this creepy little database and uses it to create ads that are geared specifically towards you. Again, no thank you. That's terrifying. Like, you won't have any privacy anymore. This has gone way too far. Just like, let us watch TV in peace. In our 4th spot, we have the cloning. Over the years, scientists have been working on cloning. I mean, they have successfully managed to clone animals. The next stop is cloning humans. In the 90s, scientists created this sheep named Dolly, all from cloning. It did take them 277 tries before Dolly was born, but they still managed to successfully do it. The only reason why scientists aren't cloning humans is because of the ethics behind it. Although some scientists in India claim that a woman did give birth to a baby through cloning. We just don't know if that's true or not. Anyways, it's believed that in the future scientists will perfect human cloning. I mean, I've seen Black Mirror, okay? I know how all of this goes down. So let's just stop right there before we have little evil minions of ourselves running around, causing havoc. In our 3rd spot, we have the social credit system. This one is literally a Black Mirror episode. Basically, scientists are working on creating a system that records your social status. They will monitor your online presence, your financial wealth, and how social you are. The better this all is, then the better your score will be. People then can check these scores, like future employers, etc., and those with better scores will do better in society. Who said that this was a good idea? Like, I understand doing background checks on people, but social media is pretty fake already. This would just give people more of a reason to lie and pretend like their life is perfect. But turns out in China, this is already a thing. They are currently enrolling everyone into a national database and ranking every citizen. Like I said, this is literally like that one episode of Black Mirror, and if you've seen the show, then you know exactly which episode I'm talking about. Moving on at number 2, we have the RoboCops. Scientists are currently working on creating real-life RoboCops. These RoboCops would be used in dangerous situations where it's unsafe for human cops to enter. So the robot would go in first, scope out the place, and then the human cops would come in after. I mean, already Boston Dynamics created a robot dog, and that thing can open doors on its own and search rooms looking for perpetrators. Maybe the next step is having a full-on robot police force team. Again, this could go wrong for a number of reasons. All we need is for the robots to be hacked or go haywire and start shooting and killing innocent citizens. This is literally the storyline for a horror film about a robot uprising wiping out the entire population. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the intimate robot buddy. So, apparently, companies are working on robots that are ultra realistic that will then be used for pleasure. That's right, in the future humans will be getting it on with robot humans. These robots will make it feel like you're doing it with the real thing, if you catch my drift. Not only that, but it will be able to move and bend in a bunch of positions, and it will cater to not only your physical needs, but your emotional needs too. So you can talk to your robot after and cuddle, you get it. Now, this is not only weird, but it's also, it's scary, not gonna lie. First off, imagine if you're getting it on and then someone hacks the robot. Who knows what the hacker could do? You're alone, you're naked, just saying. A lot of things could go wrong there. Or what if the robot malfunctions during it all? Okay, that would be a painful outcome. Or if all of a sudden the robot was like, I don't like being whipped or choked, and then comes after you. I'm just saying, this could go very, very wrong. Also, they would totally replace human affection, or people would become desensitized. So, it's not gonna end well. Let's just stop right there.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have Greek fire. Greek fire is essentially the primitive form of napalm, and it was first created in Greece. It was used often and efficiently for naval battles during the Byzantine Empire. It was used and worked well for these battles because it was able to not only float on top of the water, but it also was difficult to put out the fire using water as well. The secrets regarding this substance were guarded so greatly as it was such a powerful weapon at the time. The information on what it was made out out of, how it was stored, or how it functioned remains a mystery to this day. The formula to recreate it has been tried many times, but it is currently thought that the particular storage and some sort of pressurized delivery system are what played such a huge role in its functionality and ignition, and we have yet to figure out those secrets. In our number 9 spot today we have flexible glass. This is something that is actually sometimes debated on whether or not it actually existed at all, but there is some evidence and anecdotes that would suggest it absolutely did at one point. The stories surrounding this lost creation depict a glassmaker who presents a glass vessel which holds various different things depending on where the story came from and who's telling it. The glass vessel was presented to the emperor, who inspected it before returning it to the glassmaker, who then threw it on the ground. The glassmaker then picks it up off of the ground and goes on to show the emperor that rather than broken pieces, the glass vessel just has a small dent in it, which he then proceeds to hammer back to the original shape, and thus the vessel now appears as if it had never taken any damage at all. It is said from here that rather than the emperor being excited about this new and useful creation, he began to worry that it would devalue things like the silver and gold already in circulation. This is said to have led to him ensuring that no one else knew the formula to create the flexible glass, and then subsequently beheading the poor glassmaker. This is what has ensured that if it ever were real, the flexible glass was a secret formula destined to stay in the past. In our number 8 spot today we have Damascus steel. It's possible you may have heard of Damascus steel before, and that is because the name still exists, and it is used in reference to a variety of pattern welded forged steel products, but the modern day stuff just isn't what it used to be. Historically, Damascus steel was discovered quite a long time ago, and it was used to make swords in the Middle East. It is said that these swords had the ability to cut through rocks or even completely cut through other swords, which is just insane. The exact process of how these swords were made has been lost to time, but it is rumored that Wootz steel was imported from Sri Lanka and used in the creation process along with other metals. Somehow the metals were basically weaved together rather than an alloy being created. This is what led to the steel not only being exceptionally strong, but also flexible, and it is this process that modern day smiths cannot seem to exactly replicate. The modern day Damascus products are definitely high quality, gorgeous products, but it seems as though the secrets of the past may hold something even better. In our number 7 spot today we have silphium. This is less of a technology and more of something that was once naturally occurring and used for a multitude of things, but is now lost. Silphium is a lost genus of fennel plant that was used quite a bit during the Roman times. It was used as a form of birth control as well as a cure for many ailments. The plant is said to have been plentiful once along the coast of what is now Libya. Apparently this plant was something that was highly valued, and it even appeared on several forms of currency because it was so highly appreciated. It is speculated that this plant may have grown only in a small portion of the world, and it was simply just over-harvested until it was driven to extinction. It wasn't used by everyone when it was used, and this could be because it was probably quite expensive. So while this wasn't a man-made creation or technology, I feel like it definitely still applies to today's list as a plant, and its medical properties are something that just may be lost forever. In our number 6 spot today we have the Library of Alexandria. This isn't necessarily technology as we now think of the word, but this certainly was one of the greatest losses we've seen. This library is said to have held a collection of over 1 million scrolls, which are said to have been all of the written works in the world at the time. The library was founded in 300 BC, and it was where the scholars of the time would come to study. It is said that when a person visited the library, they needed to give over any books that they had so that they could be copied and added to the collection of the library. It isn't exactly clear what it was that destroyed it, but rumors range from Julius Caesar accidentally setting it on fire to an invasion that set it ablaze. At the end of the day, the building burned and everything in it was destroyed. What was in that building was absolutely priceless, and we can only guess at what secrets it held. Unfortunately, many of what was in that library wasn't written anywhere else, so it's destined to stay a mystery. In our number 5 spot today we have Cloudbuster. In the 1950s, a man named William Reich created a pseudoscientific thing that was called a cloudbuster. It is said that this device could manipulate a certain energy that would affect the atmosphere, which would then change the patterns of the weather. The energy that the device is said to manipulate manipulate is called Oregon Energy. It is said that they actually used this device on a farm in the 1950s, and it actually worked when it ended up calling down rain. Apparently people have tried to make modern cloudbusters, but to severe consequences for both the person who made it as well as the area surrounding their invention. Many people are wondering now if this cloudbuster ever actually worked, and if it did, how? Because we just can't seem to make anything like it. If you had a working cloudbuster, what would you do with it? Do you make a snowstorm? A perfectly rainy day? I don't know. Let me know down below in the comments what you would do. In our number 4 spot today we have Starlight. Starlight was created in the 1970s and 80s by a British hairstylist and amateur chemist, Maurice Ward. What Starlight was a heat-resistant plastic that was basically indestructible. This plastic could withstand temperatures of 10,000 degrees Celsius, and it could withstand a force 75 times that of Hiroshima. Of course, when people heard about this invention, it became the talk of the town. When Maurice brought the material on TV, he covered an egg in Starlight, blasted it with a blowtorch for 5 minutes, and then when the Starlight was peeled back, the egg was still cold. NASA of course wanted to know what the heck Starlight was and how they could get their hands on it, but Maurice was really worried about what would happen if his invention fell into the wrong hands. This led to him keeping the makeup of Starlight a complete secret that he took with him to his grave. It has been said that the company ThermaShield has been able to replicate Starlight when they received the rights in 2013, so maybe this one will be making a comeback after all. In our number 3 spot today we have the Apollo Gemini space program technology. This isn't necessarily technology that has been entirely lost, but it has been the source of many confused scientists. The race to get to space was a fast, cutthroat one with everyone trying to be the first. With everyone running around trying to create all of these new technologies before anyone else, and with private contractors being brought on for certain things in order to help, all of the schematics and original components are so disorganized and scattered that now NASA staff are trying to reverse engineer the entire thing to see how it all worked together in tandem. Not to mention how those private contractors of course took all of their records with them, leaving no records behind for anyone to be able to get a full view of how this was all able to take place. I guess no matter the rush, it's equally as important to keep the documentation. You would think that NASA would have had someone just to keep documents, right? I feel like there's gotta be someone out there who's got that job now. In our number 2 spot today we have the Wardenclyffe Tower. This tower was also known as the Tesla Tower, so I'm sure you can guess who built it. This tower was an early experimental wireless transmission station that was designed by Nikola Tesla. It was located in Long Island in 1901 and 1902. So here's the thing, the industrialist J.P. Morgan was the one who asked Tesla to create this wireless tower that could send messages across the world. Okay, sweet. That's super useful to us, so that would be great, right? Well, what Tesla built was even better. It was a device that would transmit free electricity across the world. What? Free electricity? That's amazing! Well, when Mr. Morgan found out, he shut the project down, had the tower destroyed, and ruined it for everyone. Imagine we all had free energy right now. I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little irritated now that I know this. Tesla's ability to wirelessly power light bulbs and other devices short distances is something that we still cannot replicate or implement in an economic way today. In our number 1 spot today we have the Tesla oscillator. Have you ever wanted to live through an earthquake on purpose? No? Me neither. And good thing we don't, because this little old gadget doesn't exist anymore. Apparently Nikola Tesla did though, when he built the Tesla oscillator, also known as the earthquake machine. This oscillator resonated at such a frequency it shook the buildings around him. While this wasn't the intended use, this is what ended up happening. It is said that he couldn't get it to shut down, so then he had to take a sledgehammer to it to destroy it and stop the shaking. Since this destruction and accidental earthquake, no one has ever been able to replicate the same sort of thing. And that's probably a good thing, to be perfectly honest.
And we're starting off this list with lethal autonomous weapons, or laws. These are weapons that are programmed by human beings but don't require a human being in order to operate. They track and engage with the enemy independently using AI. Of course, they come in the form of drones, robots, and some of them could be incredibly small. AI researchers from all over the world right now are strongly advocating for banning the use of this technology. The amount of suffering this type of warfare could cause is unimaginable. Not only could these things be programmed to take out important political leaders, but they could be programmed to target specific groups of people too. Innocent civilians. Imagine a swarm of tiny drones sent out to eliminate masses of people from a specific group or race in one swift attack with no known source. There's just nothing good that comes from this, or at least very little. One of the major problems here is not only that AI-operated machines don't have the ability to properly discern what constitutes a proper target, because they're machines, they have no attachment to human life, but it's also just too easy. Not for the victims, of course, but for the people sitting back and letting a machine do all the dirty work. Part of what deters people from violence is the up-close personal aspect of it. There's a Star Trek episode called The Taste of Armageddon that is eerily similar to this, and I think Kirk sums it up best. Death, destruction, disease, horror, that's what war is all about. That's what makes it a thing to be avoided. You've made it neat and painless. So neat and painless, you've had no reason to stop it. It's pretty scary stuff. Number 9, human augmentation. Ever seen or read a cyberpunk story? If so, then you're probably very familiar with human augmentation. Cybernetic body replacements, giving people enhanced abilities like mechanical eyes that can see better, limbs that are stronger than your average human. Now, some human augmentation is great. People who are born without essential body parts, or people who have suffered terrible accidents. Technology like this is fantastic, but just like with anything, it has the potential to get completely out of hand. First of all, this could make the gap between the rich and the poor even wider than it already is. Let's just say technology like this started seeping its way into everyday life. Maybe people would start being hired for jobs based on the effectiveness of the technology built into their bodies. And if this technology turns out to be expensive, which I gotta imagine it would be, or at least very well could be, people would be on a far more uneven playing field than they are now. At number 8, we have genetic editing. So this is basically human augmentation before a person is even born. Not with mechanical implants, but editing the genes so that the baby will be born the exact way the parents want. No illnesses or disabilities, they'll be tall, strong, physically elite. This sounds nice, but once again, we could have the same problem as with cybernetic implants. Who's going to be able to afford to do this? Again, that disparity between the classes could just continue to expand. Now, it's not like the rich don't already have an advantage. That has and always will be the case, but on a physical level, in such a definitive, final way like this, it just sounds really frightening. On the other hand, if we all had access to this type of technology, and call me a dork for saying this if you want, but I think differences are important. People are different, people different heights and shapes with varied sets of strengths and weaknesses. It gives people character, it gives us challenges to push through, and we gain unique perspectives because of it. Without all that, we'd have a pretty boring world, because at the end of the day, what's so inspiring about being perfect? So yeah, on one hand, I'm saying it would be bad if only one group of people had access to it, while at the same time saying it would be bad if we all had it. I don't know, it just sounds bad to me. Want a society where the rich not only have power, but are now superior in every single way? Or do you want a boring world where everyone is basically Barbie and Ken dolls? Take your pick. Next on the list, we have neurotechnology. Neurotechnology involves using technology to interact with or manipulate the brain's functions. Stuff like brain-computer interfaces, deep brain stimulation. Now, there's a lot of good that can come from this technology, primarily in the medical field, but there are ethical concerns, of course. Having a form of technology readily available that directly accesses the brain raises the risks of hacking or unauthorized access to personal thoughts and information. Something like this could easily be misused and exploited, leading to a loss of privacy and control over one's mind. Neurotechnology also raises questions about consent, especially in cases where it's used to modify behavior or enhance cognitive abilities. And again, there's the potential for unequal access to technology like this, and we all know what kind of effect that would have on society.
In our number 6 spot today, we have the pyramids. Alright, I'm just gonna ask, How the heck were the pyramids built? The more I learn about it, the more I'm convinced it must have been aliens because it just seems so crazy and intricate and impossibly amazing. The pyramids of ancient Egypt may just appear to be amazing, incredible tombs that are something to be jealous of, but they really are so much more than that. Not only have they given researchers and historians incredible insight to what life in ancient Egypt was like, they have also opened the doors to some of the greatest mysteries. Firstly, there was the transportation of the massive stones that they used, some of which are believed to have come from nearly 500 miles away. Getting all of the materials from point A to point B is more than fascinating in itself, but there's more questions. There were not iron tools or chisels at the time, so how were they able to shape their stonework with such incredible precision? How were they able to finish the tops of the pyramids with the same precision despite their standing over 400 feet tall? And how were they able to build them in such a way that they've been able to withstand all of the elements for 4,500 years? You see what I mean at this point? It is clear that however they were able to build the pyramids in ancient Egypt, we just don't have that kind of technology or knowledge nowadays because there is no way we'd be able to recreate these amazing structures in the same way as the original. Because people are gonna be like, we could create the pyramids. I'm like, I know we could now, Mr. Crane Operator, but imagine having to go up there all by yourself. No crane in sight. Just you and a big old rock. Good luck. In our number 5 spot today we have the Sloot coding system. Okay, this one isn't exactly ancient, but I still had to talk about it today because I had never even heard of this at all before. Jan Sloot was a Dutch electronics engineer, and in the mid to late 90s he created a data storage method that could hold an entire full-length movie in just 8 kilobytes of data. Considering most modern technologies still require much more data to store a full-length movie, this kind of technology was extremely impressive for the times. Investors of course quickly began to flock to Jan. When he presented his data storage system to a man named Roll Piper from Philips, Roll ended up later leaving Philips in order to join Jan's company. Just days before the code and system was due to be released, Jan ended up being found dead in his garden from what seemed to be a heart attack. This is of course extremely tragic and sad, but you might be sitting there thinking the same thing that I was. His death probably didn't stop people from still seeking the answers that had yet to be released on how this storage system was created. Well, as it turns out, people of course did look, but a key piece of information regarding it all was on a floppy disk that was in Jan's possession. Since his death, no one has ever been able to find this floppy disk that is said to hold these secrets. In our number 4 spot today we have the Antikythera mechanism. The Antikythera mechanism is an extremely mysterious discovery that has stumped researchers ever since it was found. This artifact was found 150 feet below the surface of the Aegean Sea in a shipwreck and is the oldest kind of computer ever recorded, as it was dated back to the 7th century BCE. The author David Childress likened the finding to if they had found a jet plane in King Tut's tomb. That's how bizarre this discovery really was. Due to the complexity and oddity of the finding, alien enthusiasts have believed for quite some time that it may have been technology that was passed down from some sort of superior being. This first analog computer may have had a ton of uses, and researchers aren't 100% sure about all the ways it was used, but it is known to have been some sort of astronomical calculator. It was able to predict eclipses and different planetary placements. The mechanism was able to calculate the position and running time of each planet. How would they have been able to create this without the use of sophisticated astronomical tools? We have been able to recreate the mechanism to see how it functions, but no one is able to tell how it could have possibly been created. In our number 3 spot today we have Mithridate. Mithridate was named after King Mithridate VI, who was the king of Pontus. It is said that he was so terribly afraid of being poisoned that he, over the course of 7 years, adapted his body to different poisons. It is also said that after mixing 45 ingredients together, he was able to create Mithridate, which is said to have been a universal antidote to all poisons. The exact formula has of course been lost to time, but historians have said that it is believed that the antidote contained opium, chopped vipers, and small amounts of both the poisons and their antidotes. Imagine, just opium, just throw it in there, why not? The antidote was originally created around 100 BCE, and it was actually used by many people for centuries, and even a apparently as recently as the 19th century. It is unclear how the recipe entirely disappeared, but despite some of the best efforts, no one has been able to recreate it since the last known use. In our number 2 spot today we have Stradivari violins. If you're a string instrument enthusiast, then you definitely have heard of the Stradivari family and the instruments created by them. These instruments were created by 1650 and 1750 and were highly sought after in their day, and even more so now. Apparently these instruments featured an unparalleled sound quality that has been found to be impossible to recreate. The instruments that have survived through to modern day are now worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, so it is abundantly clear that these instruments are incredibly valuable. Here's the catch though. Experts can't agree or figure out what exactly it is that makes them sound so wonderful. Some have speculated that the magnificent sound comes from a fungus that grew in the region, and some think that it is the density of the wood, but regardless, no one really knows for sure. At the end of the day, the secrets of the family art were laid to rest with the Stradivari family. In our number 1 spot today we have Roman cement. Concrete is the most commonly used building material in the world, but our current cement, water, sand, rocks mixture is nothing compared to the original stuff. While our modern concrete was created in the 1700s, there was obviously stuff that was being used before. In fact, concrete was used quite a bit during the antiquity by Egyptians, Assyrians, and Romans. The Romans seemingly used it the most, and they are the ones who really perfected the recipe that we just can't seem to replicate now. Apparently the ancient mixture involved burnt limestone as well as crushed rocks and water, but whatever the heck it was, their structures were a lot more withstanding than ours are now, which has led people to question, how do we get that level of hardiness back in our modern day concrete? And to that I say, like most other things, I do not know. Perhaps this is just another mystery lost to time. Starting off in our number 10 spot we have drones. Drones aren't a new piece of technology, but they are most definitely becoming more widespread. In fact, there have been surveys conducted that suggest that drones are actually the piece of technology that is up and coming that the general public fears the most. Part of this, or really a lot of this, is due to the fact that since this technology evolved so quickly, the laws and regulations surrounding them haven't exactly had the time to catch up. Drones can be super useful and are a brilliant piece of technology when used responsibly, but considering how the Federal Aviation Administration regulations don't really directly address residential areas, this creates a problem for those who don't know about the drone or about the user's intention. Sometimes when someone just wants to fly their drone and enjoys this piece of technology, it can make others feel like they're being spied on. In our number 9 spot today we have pathogens. I am talking specifically about those that are weaponized. Back in 2005, Ray Kurzweil and Bill Joy noted that publishing the genomes of deadly viruses where the entire world could see would be the perfect setup for destruction, and it's possible that they might have been right. Like with anything, there is always the possibility that some person or group will take this knowledge and use it to their advantage to do something horrible, and the same goes for these viral recipes. There is also the possibility of accidental leaks while people are researching. One positive thing of these genomes explanations is that people can study these viruses, they can get to know them, and hopefully also learn their countermeasures, but in doing so, this sometimes creates an even more deadly version, and this could wreak an unbelievable amount of havoc on the world. Whether accidental or purposefully being weaponized, these viruses could change the world as we know it. In our number 8 spot today we have self-driving cars. The issue isn't with the self-drive per se, I mean there are plenty of reasons why this step makes sense, why it could be exponentially helpful, and why there are people who are clearly on board with the idea, but there are also some things that are rightfully a major cause for concern. One of the most debated and truly one of the biggest questions surrounding this is an ethical one, like will a self-driving car prioritize its driver or passenger or operator, whatever you want to call them, over other road users, and not just over other road users, but at the expense of other road users. Also, what happens when the car is left with a decision to either collide with one person or another? A car couldn't take into account any other sort of extenuating circumstances like a human would. In our number 7 spot today we have autonomous AI. Okay, so there's a Harvard professor named Nick Bostrom, and he devised this thought experiment that really does show us the dangers of this sort of super intelligence. So basically he made this hypothetical scenario where a paperclip company, you know, all the huge corporations that are dedicated to just making paperclips, if they made some sort of AI robot thing that is tasked with the one single goal of creating as many paperclips for the company, in theory, This is amazing. There's so many paper clips, we don't know what to do with them. Paperclip stocks are higher than they've ever been, and this robot has put that little guy on the computer screen straight out of business. But now, something has happened. This robot, which only knows paper clips and only knows it's supposed to create as many as possible, obviously takes this job very seriously, and it's a robot, so it doesn't know about everything else in the world. So this robot, in order to complete its mission, starts to take other resources, such as those we need to survive, in order to create these paper clips because it doesn't know anything else. In doing this and fulfilling its paperclip destiny, it wipes out humanity in the process. Of course, this is an extreme hypothetical, but it's definitely something to think about. This is just one hypothetical scenario out of many that could potentially arise.
And at number 6, we have advanced ransomware. Ransomware is malicious software that infects a computer or network, encrypts important files, and then demands you pay in exchange for the decryption key. As much of a problem as this type of stuff already is, it's on the rise and could become a much more significant threat, especially if imbued with something like AI. The use of AI could amplify the danger of ransomware attacks. It could enable attackers to personalize and automate their attacks, making them more sophisticated and harder to detect. And with AI, an attacker could set traps on just a larger scale too, right? Like all they gotta do is just sit back and let it do its thing. This technology might also adapt and evolve in real time, making defenses like firewalls almost useless. And AI generated content could also deceive users into downloading malicious files. Let's say it could flawlessly replicate an email that you think is coming from a friend or family member, for example, or some other reputable source, right? Quantum computing. Quantum computing is a new approach to computing that uses quantum bits or qubits to process information. So unlike traditional computers, like on your laptop or your smartphone, which use bits that are either 0 or 1, qubits can represent any combination of both 0 and 1 simultaneously, allowing them to perform very complex calculations a lot faster than your average computer. This could be great for solving complex problems, of course, but again, there are some dangers here. One concern is its ability to break encryption methods that not only you and I use day to day, but on a larger scale too. Sensitive data could be leaked with far more ease than any hacker would be able to accomplish. Authentication systems that we have in place now could also become obsolete, leading to potential breaches and cyber attacks. At number 4, we have hacked vehicles. Self-driving cars are a thing now, which is kind of cool, but because of the technology that's used to make this happen, the internet, there are concerns about self-driving cars being vulnerable to hacking. As autonomous vehicles rely heavily on complex software systems, any vulnerabilities or bugs could be exploited, and hackers could potentially gain control of the car and do God knows what. They could use the vehicle to attack pedestrians or intentionally harm the passengers. Manufacturers are definitely working to implement advanced security to help prevent threats like this, but nothing is foolproof. It's tough to stay ahead of ever-evolving hacking techniques. Number 3, nanotechnology. Nanotechnology involves the manipulation of matter at an atomic, molecular, and supramolecular scale. It could be potentially used in medicine, electronics, and food technology. And just like with any form of technology, though, it could be used for good, but it does raise safety concerns. The small size of nanoparticles could enable them to penetrate cells and tissues, potentially leading to unintended health effects. There's also potential toxicity of nanoparticles, and we're still not sure of the long-term impact they could have on human health and the environment. Nanoparticles might also interact unpredictably with biological systems, causing unintended harm there, and manufacturing and disposing of nanoparticles and of nanomaterials could have an environmental risk. And of course, the potential to create powerful nanoscale weapons or surveillance devices could obviously be a problem too. At number 2, we have facial recognition. Doesn't get much more science fiction-y than facial recognition. Having a computer scan your face to unlock your phone or gain access to a place instead of using a boring old key. But this technology is also being implemented in security cameras now. While this can be useful in identifying criminals, There's a major invasion of privacy with this. Facial recognition is deployed without consent, leading to mass surveillance where people are constantly tracked and monitored in public spaces. There's also a risk of misidentification too. Like, this technology is not 100% flawless. It may generate false positives or negatives, leading to innocent individuals being falsely accused or targeted. And technology like this, as well as pretty much everything else on this list, is advancing faster, once again, than we have time to comprehend. We just don't have proper guidelines in place right now, and companies and governments might, and in some places currently are, exploiting the technology for their benefit, just throwing ethics out the window. Finally, we have AI itself. This one is pretty obvious. Scientists from around the world are warning of how out of hand this technology can get. Arguably, it already has. What nobody is able to agree on, though, is a solid solution and plan of how to go about regulating it. It's mostly jobs that are on the forefront of everyone's list of concerns right now, me being one of them. Jobs in the entertainment industry are obviously under huge threat. At the end of the day, most companies, they're going to go with cost-cutting measures, right? So why hire actors or writers when you can have a computer do it? Totally sucks artistically. Most people would probably agree that's not what they want to see, but given some time, it could easily become the norm. Even if art ain't a big concern for you, AI could take over countless other jobs too. Imagine your kids going to school and being taught by an AI-generated teacher. It's got all the knowledge in the world, right? Actually, you know what? That's kind of far-fetched. They wouldn't go into school. They could just throw on a VR helmet and go to virtual class. Yeah, it's a bit of a concern. But at the end of the day, I don't think we're going to let this technology beat us. I think we as humans are too persistent and get bored far too easily to allow ourselves to be replaced by robots while we sit around and eat fried chicken while watching AI-generated episodes of Seinfeld. I think we all want more out of life than that, right?
Let's find out as we start off at number 10 now with machine learning. Artificial intelligence is increasing at neck-break speed thanks to machine learning. Huge increases in data and computing power means that we may no longer have to tell AI exactly what to do each step of the way. Instead, we simply tell it what we want, for example, recognize a face, and then we give it enough data for it to be able to learn all by itself. It may get it wrong 1,000 times, but eventually the number of mistakes will get down to zero. It's almost an inevitability. Moving on to number 9 now, we have real fake news. Technology has replaced a lot of jobs in the world, but did you ever expect that it could replace jobs in news? Heliograph is the name of a bot that some publications are using to write news articles for them. This is how it works. Editors create narrative templates for the stories, including key phrases. Then they hook up Heliograph to a source of data, and there you have it. A story written entirely by an AI, sometimes with its own opinions and narrative voice. Companies are looking to use this to generate articles covering many smaller stories instead of getting a handful of humans to just spend hours focusing on the big ones. I'm wondering if this may even get to a point where you just searching for a story will instantly create a full article on it for you to read, even if it didn't exist before. If that ever happens, tell everyone it was my idea. At number 8 now, we have self-driving cars. Companies like Google, Uber and Tesla have been developing self-driving cars for years now. Now, quite often the progress that these companies are making doesn't end up in mainstream news unless an accident occurs, but successes are happening and they're happening fast. Some experts say that self-driving cars could become a normal sight in some cities by 2022. Moving on to number 7 now, we have CGI. Every year people go to the movies and marvel at how much CGI seems to be progressing. It's been steady improvements for a number of years now, but for those of you that saw Star Wars Rogue One, you'll know that CGI now has the ability to almost perfectly recreate people who never even filmed that scene at all. In that movie, a CGI version of a young Carrie Fisher reprised her role as Princess Leia. Carrie died just a few weeks after the movie's release. People began debating about the ethics of using CGI avatars of people after they die. Others felt there is an even bigger topic to discuss here. What if this CGI gets so good it can create videos of people doing and saying things they never did and they never said? It's a scary thought.
In our number 6 spot today, we have automation. Okay, it's no secret that robots have been putting people out of work. It's something we've seen for years. And as technology advances, there are jobs that were once done by humans that are now being done by Siri. Bad example, but you get what I mean. It is said that this trend, however, of robots doing human jobs is only on the rise. As an example, something we just talked about, self-driving cars, it is said that this new piece of technology will soon put 5 million Americans out of jobs. That's a lot. I mean, if taxi companies or Uber can somehow find a way to remove the middleman, you know they would in order to rake in more cash for themselves. This issue isn't just with this, however. It is said that by 2030, nearly 70 million people could lose their jobs due to automation. Is it efficient? Yes. Is it potentially very harmful? Also yes. In our number 5 spot today we have virtual reality. Okay, another piece of technology that isn't new, but it is definitely more widespread now, and that is virtual reality. It's a super fun piece of technology, or it can be absolutely terrifying, and people are legitimately worried about it. People have raised concerns over how this sort of technology might affect our brains, more specifically our memories. There are worries that younger people using these sorts of technologies might end up creating these sort of false memories under the influence of virtual reality. This, however, is something that does need a lot more study to confirm if these sort of effects really do exist and if they are happening, and if so, whether they outweigh the benefits. In our number 4 spot today we have artificial superintelligence. We talked about autonomous AI, but this is something pretty different. Stephen Hawking once said that artificial superintelligence could be our worst mistake in history. As humans, we have been able to dominate this world because of our intelligence, so introducing something that is far smarter and a lot faster than us would mean that we are no longer at the top. We'd kind of just be at the mercy of whatever this super intelligence wanted to do, and as of right now, it's not clear that we could create a friendly enough version to safely be able to do this. Unless we are able to be sure that this wouldn't happen, it remains an idea that has a lot of people pretty freaked out. In our number 3 spot today we have nanotechnology. I'll be honest with you guys, this is a technology that I have an extremely basic understanding of because it is a technology for people who are way smarter than me. Technology buffs have been clear, however, that weaponized or just absolutely botched molecular assembling nanotechnology is one of the biggest threats to face when it comes to technological advancements. The threat comes from 2 places. One is unchecked self-replication and the other is exponential growth. If someone decided to use this kind of technology to do evil, or if it even simply fell into the wrong hands, this kind of nanotechnology could lead to the creation of microscopic machines that consume all of our critical resources at an insanely quick pace while also replicating itself at the same time. It's a bit of a complicated idea, but with how fast technology changes and advances, there are some people who are worried about this kind of technology entering the world. In our number 2 spot today we have data trafficking. This point is mostly about how our technology in some areas has outpaced the regulations behind it. Similar to the discussion about drones, data trafficking is another one of those things that people have just used to their advantage, not worrying about the detriment it might bring to others. What I mean when I say data trafficking is the sharing of other people's data without their control or their awareness. Throughout the history of the internet, there's been a countless amount of rules and regulations that have been introduced because, of course, when the internet was born, no one was prepared for exactly what was to come. This became abundantly clear with the creation of social media as well. Many people claim that data trafficking is something that not only undermines people's personal liberty, but maybe even democracy itself. In our number 1 spot today we have cryptocurrency. Okay, this is one thing that I'll admit. It has the power and potential to be great, but it could also be pretty detrimental to our world as well. Before you crypto fanatics totally freak out, hear me out. Right now, cryptocurrency is largely inaccessible. This means that it's mostly being used to make rich people richer while other people end up poorer. That could change, but that's just where things are right now. The positive side with crypto, however, is the underlying technology that allows it, blockchain. This technology is one that could be and really is quite transformative.
Starting off this countdown, we have cryonics. I'm sure you all have heard of this because there's that urban legend out there that Walt Disney froze his head so that later on he could be revived. Well, companies are currently working on this so that when you do die, you can be brought back to life several years later. As of now, the technology to do so is not perfect yet. Plus, the technology to unfreeze people doesn't exist yet. They're taking it one step at a time. First, they are figuring out how to freeze people without killing them or damaging them, and then they will worry about the whole bringing back to life part later on. I'm sorry, but this is creepy. Like, the whole bringing people back from the dead should be illegal. Plus, who wants to be immortal anyways? I always wanted to be, but you know, the state of the world is crumbling, so maybe not. In our 9th spot today, we have the robot caregiver. By 2030, it's said that there will be a huge decline in personal support workers and professional caregivers in the US. So a team of Irish scientists are trying to solve this problem by creating robots to work in senior homes. The robot would roam the hallways and people can communicate with it by saying hey and then its name. So it's kind of like how you say hey Alexa to activate Amazon's Home Assistant. Also, did I trigger your Alexa? Let me know in the comments below. The robot then can help with whatever the person needs help with. Not only that, but it has an LED screen face so it can show you emotions. They tested this out in Knollwood Seniors Home with a robot named Stevie, just to see, you know, how the seniors would react to it. The next step is to get Stevie to do more complex commands, like take food door to door, or to help seniors when they're in distress. Now you might be like, oh, that's great, but hello, this is one step closer to robots replacing humans altogether. I mean, you don't have to pay robots. This also means that we're one step closer to a whole robot takeover. No thank you. In our 8th spot, we have the nanobots. Scientists are currently working on nanobots that could be injected into our bodies to help us. They believe that these tiny bots ranging from 0.1 to 10 micrometers could potentially seek out and destroy cancerous cells in our body. Or at least that's what they're hoping that they can do. Not only that, they said that they could be used to deliver medication to parts in our body, or can be used to monitor our bodies. In fact, futurists predict that within the next 10 years, our blood will be filled with these tiny little bots. Some even say that these bots will be used to transmit your thoughts into a wireless cloud. I don't know how the hell that would work. Like, we have our own personal iCloud from our brain, so we need to worry about people literally hacking into our brain as well? No thanks. Not only that, but these bots will also be used to monitor air quality and weather, so on. Meaning, these bots will be everywhere. We won't be able to see them, but they'll be in our food, water, bodies, urine, feces, everywhere. Would you trust millions of tiny small robots in your body? Personally, I'm not a fan, because whoever controls the nanobots controls everything. That just doesn't sit well with me. In our 7th spot, we have the voices in your head. Nowadays, there are ads everywhere. You look up vacuum cleaners once and then all of a sudden for weeks your ads on Facebook and Instagram are all related to damn vacuum cleaners. Well, companies are now taking it a step further. In the works are ads playing in grocery stores. A company called Holosonics has invented something called the audio spotlight system. Basically, they are tiny speakers that can be used for in-store advertising, but you have to be standing in the right place to hear it. It's not like a bunch of ads are playing all at once through the grocery store PA system. So as you're standing looking at a certain product, it will register that someone is there and a voice will begin to tell you all the reasons why you should buy this product. That sounds an awful lot like mind control to me. No thanks.
At number 6 now we have drones. For a lot of people, drones are nothing more than a cool thing for videographers to own or people who just love trends. Amazon changed people's perception though when they announced their plans to have delivery drones all over the world one day, shipping almost anything you want to your door within minutes. Some experts actually think renting will become more popular when it comes to drones. People might not bother spending hundreds of dollars to own things that they only use a few times a year when they could just rent it for a few dollars when they need it and have it delivered to their house in minutes. Next up at number 5 now we have stem cells. Stem cells are cells that can differentiate into other types of cells. They can be found in the likes of bone marrow and blood. It's hoped that they can provide treatment one day for diseases such as diabetes, heart disease, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's and cancer. Enough stem cells can even be used to grow entire organs for patients without the fear of their bodies rejecting them, as the stem cells will actually come from their own body. At number 4 now we have augmented reality. Many science fiction works have imagined humans of the future living in some sort of virtual reality, but augmented reality seems to be challenging that idea. Augmented reality is the real world with computer generated information displayed on top in real time. At the moment, headsets are most commonly used to display graphics in front of the person's eyes. In the future though, contact lenses will most likely be the preferred method of display. Moving on to number 3 now, we have cybernetic technology. For most of us, we see amputations as an unfortunate way to save someone's life or a removing a part of their body. Amputations may be seen in a whole new light though with the advent of cybernetic technology. Prosthetic limbs are now starting to become better than real ones in some cases. Experts predict that if they become realistic looking as well, people may start to have their own limbs removed in favour of these prosthetic limbs that could make them faster, stronger and fitter in just about every way imaginable. If that happens, will we start to see a divide in society between the rich who can afford these super bodies and the poor who cannot? Next up at number 2 now we have nanotechnology. This is the manipulation of matter on the atomic or supramolecular level. It has a range of implications such as making technology faster and devices smaller. It can be used to make materials that perform a lot better than current ones we have. Perhaps the most intriguing use of nanotechnology is the creation of nanobots. It would be small enough to flow through your bloodstream and fight off any diseases or ailments in your body, becoming a sort of artificial immune system. And finally, number 1 now, we have reusable space technology. One of the biggest things that has stopped space travel from being open to the public has been the cost. Space travel has always been an insanely expensive business and so not commercially viable. That's all changing though with the likes of companies such as SpaceX. Their reusable rockets have helped slash the cost of launching a shuttle into space. It will still remain expensive for a while yet, but eventually space travel could become affordable to the average member of the public.